So let's talk about the UFC, man. You saw, right? You saw that we had Demian Maia in the gym.
That's so awesome.
It was so cool.
Yeah.
Man, I got a really cool story about him. So if you guys don't know, Demian Maia came in to train at Stronghold. One of my business partners, he's just a weird dude. Really cool guy, but he speaks Portuguese, and he just is in this sort of Brazilian community and everything. He's from Angola, and they speak Portuguese there. So he's got this kind of language connection with a lot of these guys. So he's friends with all the Brazilians in some way or another. Demian Maia's team or someone through him got in touch with my business partner, and they were looking for a place to train. Usually, when people look for a place to train in Singapore, they always go to Evolve.
Right.
But problem is, his opponent is repping Evolve.
Right.
So I guess they needed somewhere else to go. And so a couple days ago, he sends a message on our group chat, and he's just like, hey, Demian Maia needs a place to train. It's at this time. Is that cool? And I'm like, fuck yeah, man. Are you kidding me? Demian Maia is going to be in my gym. So, he went totally Brazilian on it, right? Because, he was supposed to be here at 8 o'clock in the morning. And so I get up at like 7:15. I mop the mats. I make sure everything looks great. So I know our gym doesn't look like a shithole or something when he comes in. And then, he shows up an hour plus late. So I'm just like, me and Charmaine went to bed at like 2, and then I'm up at 7, and I'm just tired, and then I'm waiting for like an hour and a half for this dude to turn up. And then, he does the Brazilian thing, and he rolls in with like 10 people, and they start training. But he was just cool, man. Like, first of all, he's huge.
He's a welterweight.
Was a middleweight.
Yeah,
now
he was
he's
a
a
middleweight,
welterweight.
yeah.
Dude, okay, for the listeners, welterweight is what I weigh now. I'm about 168, 170-ish. Right,
77 kilos for the...
Yeah, 77 kg. I'm
Yeah.
like 75. 75 and a half. I just checked myself yesterday.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's
you
basically...
gained a little bit of weight too then.
Dude, I'm
Coach life.
jacked, dude. What are you talking about?
Coach life.
So he came in, and I realized that next week he's going to weigh the same thing as me, which is fucking insane. He is gigantic. He's at least 8 inches taller than me, 6 or 8 inches taller than me. He's 6'5", something like that, and he's jacked, huge. And so they came in and trained, and I got this really interesting story if anyone wants to know how cool Demian Maia is. So I assume every listener in this show knows who he is, but he's fighting Ben Askren in the main event of UFC Singapore. And he's a ADCC champion, and he's a Mundial champion in the gi, and he's fought Anderson Silva for the title, and he just fought Tyron Woodley last year. He's like ranked in the top 5, and he's been there for 10 years. And he came in and trained and shit, and we kind of just left our distance, and I had this friend, Jake, shout out to you, Jake. His little daughter comes in and she trains at 10 o'clock, and I told them the training window was 8 to 10 because that's when our kids' classes start. And so I sent him a message like 30 minutes earlier. I'm like, hey, bro, if you come in a little early, you might get a surprise. Part of their thing was, you can't videotape it. They don't want anybody to swamp the gym, so, you can't really tell anybody that he's here. And but I told him because it's usually just 2 people that come in for that class, and his daughter was one. So I was like, hey, if you come in a little bit early, you might get a treat, And his daughter, India, is going to compete at the Singapore BJJ Open in November. She's 5 years old, cute as shit, right? Just a little blonde hair girl, just like kind of a space cadet. She's just always rolling around and smiling and stuff. And at the end of training, they're sitting there watching because they came in early to see him. And then I asked if he minds taking a picture with us in front of the sign because we can share it on the social media. He's like, he was really cool. And then after that, Jake and India come up and they try to take a picture with him too. And I we're sitting over there, sitting on the chairs and stuff. And he goes over and just starts talking to her out of the blue. Like, he's chilling with all of his bros. And then he goes over and he's like, hey, how are you doing? He starts talking to this little 5-year-old. And then I was like, oh, she's going to compete in her first competition in like 3 weeks. And he's like, oh, you're going to compete. How old are you? And he just like randomly goes out of his way to talk to the little girl that's got like 2 stripes on her white belt. And he's just like talking to the family. He goes over out of his way. They didn't come up to him. He goes out of his way to make sure he talked to everybody. And he's like, oh, I've got a son that's your age. And they just started training jiu-jitsu. And he just went out of his way to bond with like a small kid that came into the gym. Yeah. No one went up to him. He went over to her and started talking to her about training and all that kind of stuff and about competing. I just thought it was fucking cool, man. He's a guy that you can just tell is exactly like he's perceived.
Yeah, so he's like the hero of the jiu-jitsu community. It's like, forget all the credentials, like ADC. Nobody cares about that. Because most of the time, a lot of times it doesn't translate into real fighting, right? So he's the guy who makes jiu-jitsu work in 2019, right? So he's the hero of all nerds.
Yeah.
Right? So
and he's 40.
And he's 40, but he's been making it work for a long time, to be fair. So he's maybe like at the end of his run, but he's still looking pretty good.
He fought Woodley last year.
Yeah, he fought Woodley last year.
I mean, for the title.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think everybody who does jiu-jitsu has a place in their heart for Demian Maia. However, I personally feel Askren takes the fight.
Yeah.
I just think that I've never seen Demian Maia submit anybody off of his back. I can't see him not being on his back against Askren. So that just, I mean, unless it turns into a shitty kickboxing match, which I'm not really like keen to watch at all. I'll throw my beer. I'll start throwing beer into the cage if that happens.
I can give you a little insider information because this podcast will be released after the fight happens. So without, pissing off Demian Maia or anything, but I can tell you he got taken down in training and by some guys that are obviously not Ben Askren.
Right.
Having said that, the caveat is they were shark tanking him.
Okay.
So he was in the whole time and they kept bringing in fresh people like every 30 or 45 seconds. I mean, it's just training. It doesn't mean shit, right? But he was taken down by some people. And Jake, the guy that brought in his girl, made a hilarious joke. He goes, "You know what's weird? I didn't see him drill one flying knee." And I was like, that's fucking hilarious, man. Because Ben Askren just got flatlined by a flying knee in 5 seconds in his last fight. They're like, yeah, he didn't drill a single flying knee.
That happens. Dude, if he threw a if Demian Maia comes out and throws a flying knee, it'd be so disrespectful.
I don't know, man. I'd be into it. I'd be into it, man.
I mean, I guess it'd be kind
maybe
of
what, flying triangle then? Because he'll probably still drop his head. I don't know. You can train it into
maybe
something.
something like that will be. I don't know. How do you think that fight goes, though? I mean,
I think I tend to agree with you. I think Askren will wrestle fuck him.
I think everybody's emotional. They're fans of jiu-jitsu. I'm a fan of jiu-jitsu, obviously. Like, I've been doing jiu-jitsu.
We're also fans of wrestling. Like, we are both wrestlers.
We're both wrestlers. I guess I was a wrestler first.
I was too.
Yeah. But to be fair, I learned jiu-jitsu because I was not as good of a wrestler as the other guys.
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck this. I hate this. I suck at it. And then I was like, oh, this is way more chill. I can just do this.
They were taking me down and punching me in the face. And I was like, I got to learn how to triangle or something. This is not going to work for me.
I was like, this is too hard.
Yeah.
I can't handle wrestling at all.
Yeah. Like, I'm on my back every round. I can probably use that to my advantage.
Let me just stay there.
Yeah.
And then
I'll master that. And then I'll be the guy who's on the back every round and they're fighting for position.
Yeah. I mean, I actually like both. I've met both guys because when I was it? Okay, I was actually talking to Steven about this on the podcast. Was it when I was cornering you when you fought Boku that Ben Askren fought Sapo the second time, or was it with him?
He was supposed to. Yeah, he was supposed to. But then Sapo missed weight.
Yeah, so that was with you.
Yeah, it was with me.
That was when Ben Askren started shit-talking him as he was walking on the scale.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, that was with you. Okay, I could not remember. It was so funny.
Yeah.
I've told the story, but I couldn't remember if I was with you or Steven.
That was with me, yeah.
Yeah, because he's fucking dying to try to make weight. And then Ben Askren's, we're in the media room, like in the back. It's only the fighters, the coaches, and then like, a photographer or some shit. And they're trying to do the official weigh-in. And Sapo missed the first weight. And then, so he goes, he cuts weight. Ben had already made weight. And then he comes back in just looking dead. I mean, his head is dragging. He's clearly cut way too much weight. Knew he wasn't going to make weight. And on the way to the scale, Ben Askren is just mercilessly shit-talking him about missing weight. And he's making everybody laugh at him. And I just kind of thought, like, this is crazy. He's like, everybody's laughing at this guy while he's fucking miserable, supposed to be fighting in the main event. And Ben Askren's making jokes about him being fat. While he's trying to weigh in, and everyone in the back is laughing at him, and I'm just like, this is fucking surreal, because Ben Askren is that guy. He will shit talk. He's just that game. He doesn't give a fuck. He will just shit talk no matter what.
I mean, he knows the game. Like, he knows how to sell in America, and that's how you sell in America.
Yeah.
Right? And the problem is, like, people don't have that ability here, so they switch the model.
Yeah. Well, that's that and the evolved Chaudhry warrior spirit,
Well, I mean, I think a lot of that was happening organically because people are...
Asia is not America.
No, it is. But then, like, 20% of it's probably, like, a little bit, like, forced. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, Colby Covington is way more than 20%.
Yeah.
That's just 100% forced.
Yeah. It gets cringe,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's hilarious because even Henry Cejudo, he's just calling himself the king of cringe. He's just leaning into it.
Yeah.
He knows it's forced, and rather than pretending like Colby that that's who he is, he's just leaning into the fact that he's cringing.
Yeah.
And that's somehow made him more relatable. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like after the McGregor era, like, people thought, oh, that's the magical formula to making money. Just kind of act like a douche,
But then you see people like Adesanya, who is actually like that. Like, he's got that charisma that's sort of natural, like Conor.
Yeah.
Like, Conor doesn't feel forced. At least it didn't. Nowadays, it maybe does a bit more. But like, when he was coming up, that shit was just flowing from him organically. And Adesanya kind of has that vibe. Like,
I felt like Conor had like a B-level joke writer writing him some one-liners to.
But
for
an MMA fighter, that's an A-level writer. Like,
I guess so. I always thought Chael was more clever.
Oh, me too. Chael's the best. I think he's the best. I still think he's the best of all time.
Yeah.
People think that Connor's better, but I think Chael is my number one trash talker of all time.
Like, I know Brazilians that love Chael.
Just because he's a shit talker?
He's just so funny, man.
Yeah.
Like it's too over the top to be taken serious. Like the Nogueira and the carrots on the bus. Oh, come on, dude. That's hilarious.
The line of like, I don't lay on my back and let people on top of me in between my legs because I'm a Republican. That's fucking hilarious, dude.
Yeah.
That's one of the best trash talking lines of all time. I laughed for a week after I fucking heard that shit. Like, so good. I will say one thing about Demian Maia before we kind of segue. The one story that I didn't talk to him much, to be honest, because he was training. I just didn't want to be that guy to interrupt and just take too much of his time. But before we took a picture, I told him I couldn't remember who he fought. But, you and I are both pro MMA fighters. We've both had plenty of fights. We've competed in multiple disciplines of martial arts. I never relish hurting anyone. I actually get kind of a cringe reaction. I think the reason why I don't take to fighting, even though I love it so much that I want to do it all the time in the gym, the reason I don't like the act itself is because I don't like hurting people. Like, just straight up. I don't get pleasure from that. Even my time when I fought, it was more like interest in technique. Like, I wanted to see my skills in a full-on scenario. It was never about defeating people. I'm not that competitive to where I'm driven to win to the point where I want to crush people. Like, I don't have that in me. It's just pure intellectual interest and interest in seeing my skill set in its natural environment. It was never. I'm not the type to step on people or crush people or just fucking kill you.
We're both also gamers, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's also like the ultimate strategy game.
It's like that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate strategy game.
It was just curiosity.
Sometimes I forget that other people see fighting as violence. So like, oh yeah, you could kick his ass. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I forgot that you see.
That's
fighting
the point.
You see fighting as violence. Like I just see it as a game. Like this is a game where
I'm totally detached.
I'm trying to master this game. I'm trying to master this skill set.
I'm as detached as much as I can be, but in every fight that I've been in, you hurt each other. That's the name of the game.
Right.
And I always felt weird about it because I don't even like hurt. If I hurt a training partner, like I've accidentally hurt people. It happens, right? Especially when you first start. I seriously get sick in my stomach. Like that's why I harp so much on control. Like with my students and everything. And so I told Demian Maia that he had that quote after the fight. I don't know which fight it was a couple years ago.
That fight, yeah.
He talked about how in his post-fight, how his goal is just to win his fights. And if he has to hurt you, he'll do it because that's what he's there to do. He's not going to let someone hurt him. But his ultimate goal is to win with the least amount of force and without hurting his opponent, which is why he does jiu-jitsu. Because his goal is to win his fights with the least amount of harm coming to his opponent. And I told him that, and I was like, for me, that's why you stand out as a fighter to me, because I relate to that sentiment so much. Like, I feel that competitive drive, and I want to win, and I love martial arts, so that's just kind of the name of the game. But I just fucking hate causing people harm. I don't like to be hurt, So
here's the thing: if you don't like to be hurt, then I can say, at least from personal experience, I've grossly underestimated least amount of harm required to win that fight, and a lot of times it was not enough because maybe I held back or maybe I.
Well, that's the thing, right? That is totally a thing, and that can happen.
Yeah.
But he mastered the art. He is the best ever at winning without hurting his opponents.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's his whole game is just built around that, and that's the essence of jiu-jitsu. And that's what I told him when I met him. I was like, he's like you said earlier, he is jiu-jitsu in MMA in a full contact situation personified.
Yeah.
And he represents all of those things that people pretend like it's the gentle art, it's this, it's that. Well, it is with some people and it isn't with others.
Right.
But he really just the essence of jiu-jitsu, I think,
Yeah.
And it was fucking cool having him in my gym, like training here. You know what? Actually, I was saying his striking is pretty fucking good. He had one of the best pad holders I've ever seen. It's like, he almost looked like an Indian Malay dude.
Oh, yeah?
He was Brazilian, but he, this dude, the beard. I wish I'd gotten a picture with the whole team. I kind of regret. He left his fucking, I was telling you, he left his gloves. He left like a water bottle. He left his mouth guard, and he left his fucking room key to the Mandarin sitting over there on my thing. So he went classic Brazilian and just left most of his shit here. So I got some souvenirs from him being here. But, excuse me, I was amazed at his pad holder, dude. I mean, this guy was good. He didn't do any kicks or anything. It was all just straight boxing. But he looked pretty sharp on the feet, man. He was doing like a minute grappling, and then he would have his pad holder come in, and his pad holder was throwing him stuff and, making him duck under for takedowns, but really, really good. And then he would have a fresh guy come in and start grappling with him with situational stuff.
I really hope he doesn't strike. I'm going to be like the antithesis of the Just Bleed fan.
Who do you think's better striker?
I think Askren's probably the third best striker in the ring. Behind the ref.
Behind the referee. I was like, wait, I didn't get what you were saying at first. That's hilarious.
Yeah, no, man. Like, and that's no secret. And I don't think that Askren would even try to like front like it's any different, you know?
So, but Demian might want to strike because he's probably the better striker, right? I mean, he stood with Anderson Silva for 5 rounds.
If he can stay, not a lot of guys with better takedown defense have been unable to stay on their feet against Askren. So,
yeah,
you know?
Well, like I said, he did get taken down in training. You know, I almost hate even saying that because training is not a fight. And, you know, it's kind of a dirty tactic to talk about what you see in training.
Sometimes
But I'm just observing what I see, and this is going to come out of it. And it's no shit talk. Like, of course everyone gets taken down in training. So I don't feel like and again, he was Shark Tanked. He was in the whole time. He did 5 rounds. He fights in a week. He did 5 rounds of hard MMA sparring with fresh people every time, and he was.
To be honest, at 40 years old, I don't think he's going to, in one camp, be able to learn anything in that camp to stop Askren's takedowns. But he can learn how to deal with it. So I think it would make more sense to be taken down. Like, just let the guy take you down. Well,
but he also choked everybody.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah,
everybody.
Yeah. So deal with that. Like, you're in that bad situation because you're definitely going to be there in the fight at some point in time, unless you do run out and throw a flying knee. But
you didn't drill a single one, bro.
Yeah.
Dude, the writing's on the wall. The technique is there. Like, the script is written on how to beat this guy.
No, I don't think
flying knee in 5 seconds, bro.
Yeah. I don't think it's a fluke, but I don't think that's something you can do every time either.
But when someone charges to crash the distance, his instinct is always to drop to the double leg.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for that.